Hello and welcome to BloombergQuint. If on Monday, Ratan Tata and the board members of Tata Sons had their day, then today was the day of Cyrus Mistry. He released an explosive letter that he had written to the Tata Sons board in which he has raised several key issues. So today we bring you on BloombergQuint, Aaj Ki Tata Khabar, in which we are going to discuss not just Cyrus Mistry's explosive letter, but we're also going to get a roundup of what it's been like standing outside Bombay House for more than 48 hours. Aayush Ailawadi has been on vigil. He's watched Ratan Tata go in and come out, watched Cyrus Mistry leave today. That is going to be one key conversation. We're then going to go to Sajeet, Manghat, to find out about the changes that were undertaken in the Articles of Association of Tata Sons, changes that shifted the balance of power against Cyrus Mistry and in favour of the Tata Trusts chaired by Ratan Tata. And finally, we're going to ask the question, how could Cyrus Mistry have not known that things were going to come to a head in that board meeting? Doesn't the law require previous information on the agenda of a board meeting? Payaswini Upadhyay is going to talk you through all of those legal details. But first, let's start with Aayush. He's right here and he's going to talk us through what it's been like ever since that fateful Monday evening when we got that press release from the Tata Sons board saying that Cyrus Mistry has been replaced. And Ratan Tata is the interim chairman. Aayush, you've been standing outside Bombay House since yesterday morning, Tuesday morning?
Technically, when we left on Monday evening, as soon as the news broke.
Correct. Okay, so give us a sense.
Of course. So when we did leave on Monday evening and we reached there as soon as the news broke out, there was this crazy sense of shock. That's one way to describe it, and that's when we started with our reports. After that, we thought, the next day, perhaps it would be, the dust would have settled and everyone would have come to terms with what happened. But that sense of uncertainty still existed. And there was also this sense of, everyone waiting for Ratan Tata to make his comeback. So we started camping there at 8 a.m. We were told he'll be there by around 11 a.m. I had a conversation with Sajeet earlier in the day. And well, he did walk in sharp at 11 a.m., but he didn't walk in from the main door where all of the media was camped. So, and everyone came there in, troops and battalions with multiple reporters and cameras and live resources. And, I had an iPhone and I went to the back door and the camera person was guarding the front door. And I told him I had a sense that he's going to come in from the back door. And following the rules, he parked a little away near Starbucks at Elphinstone Building and he walked with his security guards. We got exclusive first visuals then. Obviously, he wasn't going to comment then, and that was for his board meeting with the Tata Group CEOs.
Well, I'm not sure it was a board meeting. It was more an
informal gathering. An informal gathering where he was briefing the Tata Group CEOs and the senior management. After that, we kept waiting for him to come out, perhaps to get a quick word and get a quick reaction, because we were all left in the dark. There was no statement. There was so much talk about caveats being filed, and we didn't know what was really happening, who filed what. A lot of information out there. So we actually waited, and in an hour or two after that, around lunchtime, he got out again. And we thought, everyone thought since BloombergQuint got the first visuals out there, so everyone lined up over there again.
At the back?
At the back entrance. And at this time, even his corporate communications team and PR team, got a Jaguar parked there, his car lined up, revving up, the door opened, telling us to move ahead, saying he's going to sit in the front. So we were all set. And that was decoy number one. Because that's exactly when a few of the wire photographers screamed out from the other end saying, no, he's already left from the third entrance, which is closer to Bombay House. We thought that was the end to the decoys, and we said, hey, you know what, we didn't get a chance to really have a word with Mr. Tata or anyone.
No comment whatsoever.
No one did. No one did, right?
But that's not true, because you did manage to get a word in later in the evening.
So we did. So once everyone was again camping in the front, I realized he was at Elphinstone Building, is where we all love going to Starbucks. And I went with our camera person Vishal, and we were out there, and I said, boss, let's camp out here for a bit. I have a feeling he's going to come out from the Chroma exit, and that's the wise thing to do. And again, he left another decoy of another car out there, but this time we didn't get fooled. We waited out there. We were the only ones waiting till late in the evening. And I did go up to him and I had a quick word saying, Mr. Tata, my name is Aayush. And I didn't want to ask a very pointed question because we didn't have time. It was a very short, a second that I had. And I said, sir, are there any reactions to today's developments? He says, no, Aayush, there are no developments. I was in my office. And then he sat back in his car. So we were, that's when we wrapped up our coverage on day 2 technically.
Yeah, which was Tuesday.
Which was Tuesday, yesterday.
Yes.
So we thought, today, since Cyrus Mistry, I was, told that Cyrus Mistry will be coming in later today. So at around 10 a.m. we got first visuals again of Cyrus Mistry coming to Bombay House.
Right.
For what reasons, we still don't know. After that, we thought, we should at least try getting a word with him as well. So we did follow him and camped out there as well. I thought, hey, is this going to be another situation where we'll have, multiple decoys? But no, what he did was much wiser. He left his car right at the front end. It was a Tata Safari, and he walked from the back. So for all of you who've not been to that part of Mumbai, this is Bombay House, the Tata headquarters, and right beside it, adjacent to it, is Mullah House, which also houses some of the city's top lawyers. We believe that we actually went walking from the back entrance, snuck in to Bombay House, where Janak Dwarka Das's office is.
To Mullah House.
To Mullah House, from Bombay House to Mullah House.
So this is Cyrus Mistry on Wednesday, walking from Bombay House to Mullah House to meet with Janak Dwarka
at around 4 p.m.
who is a very, very well-known lawyer in the city, right?
And then we thought, hey, being the media, we don't want to really make it like a big deal, but we do want to be around, perhaps to get a quick word with him as well. So we got a little greedy and we waited. But this time we covered both the entrances of Mullah House. When we covered both the entrances of Mullah House, I made Harry, a camera person, stand there, and I stayed back over here. Then, sensing the security and the cars, the safaris doing the rounds because they were trying to confuse us with where he's going to come out from. The media shouldn't get, any sense of this. Well, it was actually a madhouse, and that's when I got the visuals, but I didn't want to really, push. It was violent. They barely let him get in.
He looked very, very harassed at the
Anyone
crowds
would.
that were surrounding him.
That was.
But Mr. Mistry should have seen it coming, right?
Absolutely.
The events of the last 3 days now,
especially after today's letter and a meeting with his lawyers.
Yeah, so that was another question I wanted to ask you. That should give you a sense of what it's like for the media to hold vigil, right? Waiting for a corporate story to develop, waiting to be able to get that 1 20-second soundbite, as we did with Ratan Tata, those few visuals of a leader going in and out. But what was yesterday the mood was of the Ratan Tata offensive, of the board's offensive.
That's right.
Today, given the contents of Cyrus Mistry's letter, what was the sense out there? Were you expecting that he might in fact clarify anything?
There was a significantly lesser media presence, but I'll tell you something. Just in one line to explain how the mood and the tables had turned. Ratan Tata was at the Elphinstone building. All right, people saw him entering there. But there was no media out there. The media was camped outside Bombay House and eventually outside Mullah House, just to get that reaction or a word from Mr. Mistry. And reporters were throwing their mics in, pushing and shoving, but he didn't speak. He was harassed, and obviously he didn't pass any comments.
All right, Aayush, we'll come back to you as we take the conversation forward. But that's what the last 2.5 days have been like. And as Aayush pointed out so succinctly, so far it has been about Ratan Tata. That was Monday evening, and that was Tuesday's vigil. But Wednesday was all about Cyrus Mistry. And we'll tell you why it was all about Cyrus Mistry. Mr. Mistry wrote this fairly explosive letter to the board of Tata Sons and to the trustees of Tata Trust. This letter was sent out via email from him to all of these people on Tuesday night at about 10 p.m. And there are many things that he has said in the letter that raise very serious questions. Let's take you through some of the key portions of that letter, key portions that you should be familiar with. The letter starts by Cyrus Mistry saying, "I was shocked beyond words at the happenings at the board meeting of October 24th. Apart from the invalidity and illegality of the business that was conducted, I have to say that the board of directors has not covered itself with glory. To replace your chairman without so much as a word of explanation and without affording him an opportunity of defending himself in a summary manner must be unique in the annals of corporate history." So that's Cyrus Mistry expressing shock, saying that what happened in that board meeting was illegal and invalid, and that this was the first time a chairman in a company has been replaced in this summary fashion. He then goes on to say in the letter that he didn't really want to actually take on this position. That in 2011, after some exploration by a search committee, He was approached by both Ratan Tata and Lord Bhattacharya individually to be a candidate for the position. He says, I politely declined. I had myself built a business which I would continue to run. However, as the search process progressed and the committee was unable to find a suitable candidate, I was asked to reconsider. So that is Cyrus Mistry giving you some background on how he was not maybe the most willing candidate for this chairmanship position. He then goes on to say that prior to my appointment, I was assured that I would be given a free hand. The previous chairman was to step back and be available for advice and guidance as and when needed. After my appointment, the articles of association were modified, changing the rules of engagement between the trusts, the board of Tata Sons, the chairman and the operating companies. Now let me just clarify here, the Tata Sons, which is the key holding company of the Tata Group, is in turn owned 66% by Tata Trusts and about 18.5% by the Shapoorji Pallonji Group. Now the Shapoorji Pallonji Group is represented by Cyrus Mistry. The Tata Trusts appointed as its chairman or their chairman Ratan Tata just a few weeks or months after Cyrus Mistry was appointed chairman of Tata Sons. So here he's saying, I was assured there would be no interference, and unfortunately very soon after I took over, in fact the balance of power shifted between me and the Tata Trusts. He then goes on to outline or detail the many financial difficulties and challenges that Tata Group companies were facing. He says, as is public knowledge, the foreign acquisition strategy, and that is Ratan Tata's foreign acquisition strategy he's referring to, with the exceptions of JLR, which is Jaguar Land Rover, and Tetley, which was acquired in the, I think, the late 90s, had left a large debt overhang. This is now Cyrus Mistry building a case for the kind of financial challenges that he had to deal with after he took over as the chairman of Tata Sons. He then goes on to put out some numbers out there in that letter. He says the capital employed in those companies, these are the companies that were facing financial challenges, that capital had risen from about 1.32 lakh crores to 1.96 lakh crores. He said this figure is close to the net worth of the group, which is at about 1.74 lakh crores. A realistic assessment of the fair value of these businesses could potentially result in a write down over time of about 1.18 lakh crores. That is Ratan Tata saying that there could be a big diminution in value of the assets held by Tata Sons and its various group companies, and that reduction in value could be as big as this. In dollar terms, this works out to roughly about $18 billion. And when Bloomberg and BloombergQuint put these stories out earlier in the day, we saw a negative impact on almost all of the listed Tata Group companies. So this is Cyrus Mistry outlining the financial complexity and challenges that Tata Group companies faced while he was chairman. He then says, I had to take many tough decisions with sensitive care to the group's reputation, as well as containing panic amidst internal and external stakeholders. He goes on to say the trust nominated directors, who I would assume would use their own independent judgment and discharge their fiduciary duties, were reduced to mere postmen. So after building the case for the kind of difficult financial turnaround that he had to achieve, he's now gone on in the letter to criticize the role of the directors of the Tata Trusts nominated to be on the board of Tata Sons. And he said, I thought that they would use their independent judgment, but instead they turned out to be mere postmen. Who is he referring to? Now, as per public knowledge, we do know that the three people nominated by the Tata Trusts on the board of Tata Sons are Nitin Nohria, Vijay Singh, and more recently Amit Chandra. So it may be that he's referring to these three or one of them within the three. In fact, in this very paragraph, he then goes on to talk about an incident that took place. He said, as an example, once the trust directors, Nitin Nohria and Vijay Singh, had to leave a Tata Sons board meeting in progress for almost an hour, keeping the rest of the board waiting in order to obtain instructions from Mr. Tata. So that's Cyrus Mistry building the case that there was continued interference from Ratan Tata. There are many other illustrations in the letter, where he tries to support that point. And then he says that the trust directors on board of Tata Sons were postmen, and that in fact they delayed a meeting because they had to take instructions from Ratan Tata that they could not make their own independent decisions. Those are Cyrus Mistry's allegations. We only have his word on this and no responses yet from any of those directors or Tata Sons. He finally goes on to say, I cannot believe that I was removed on grounds of non-performance. As you are aware, the Nomination and Remuneration Committee, comprising Vijay Singh, Farida Kambata and Ronen Sen, independent directors, two of whom have voted for my removal now, had only recently lauded and commended my performance. So he's questioning the change in approach, the change in view and the change in opinion that these directors have had of his performance, and that's the change in opinion that led to a majority vote that led to his dismissal on Monday evening. He goes on to say, I hope you realize the predicament that I found myself in, being pushed into the position of a lame duck chairman. My desire was to create an institutional framework for effective future governance of the group. So Cyrus Mistry saying, I didn't really have any power. The power was all with the Tata Trusts, the directors or the nominees of whom were directors on Tata Sons. They took instructions from Ratan Tata, and in his letter he illustrates other previous instances of where Ratan Tata had intervened to make decisions on behalf of Tata Sons, and therefore he says, I was a lame duck chairman, and that's a fairly strong statement to make. So I think that sort of, in a sense, rounds up the key elements of Cyrus Mistry's explosive letter, and I want to focus on one element that he puts there. He says soon after he took over, the articles of association of Tata Sons were changed, and in that change lay a shift in balance of power. Sajeet Manghat has spent the last 24 hours going through those articles of association, and he's here to explain to you exactly what changed and why Cyrus Mistry thought that he had lost power.
But he didn't lose power on 24th of October. He lost power 17 months into his job.
That's what he says in the letter.
Yes, and it was not known because the article of association were amended on April 9, 2014. 17 months into the job, the articles for association were amended, and it was done through 7 amendments done passed by the shareholders, which primarily was the Tata Trust. If you look at the first one is appointment of directors. Now, initially what used to happen was the Dorabji Tata Trust and Ratan Tata Trust used to appoint nominees. Now, what Ratan Tata did was he combined both the trusts, and now 1/3 of the board would be constituted by nominees of these trusts. And the bigger thing was that these nominees would have much more power, as I would go on to explain a little later. But Amit Chandra's appointment in August 2016 was one of the part of that.
So as a result of that change, the first one is 1/3. Representation on board. Second big change?
The second big change was the powers of the chairman. The powers of the chairman was curtailed because now only any resolution or any action of the chairman was allowed, subject to the fact that only by way of prior board permission or resolution. So anything he does, the board has to approve it before he does it.
Wow, okay. So that's the second thing.
That's the second one. The third one is the shift in control. The control went entirely in the hands of the nominee directors of Tata Trust. It very categorically said that any resolution has to have the nominee directors present in the board meeting, and an affirmative vote of majority of the nominee directors have to be there for the resolution to pass. So even if he is able to convince other board members, if the affirmative vote of the nominee directors is not there, he cannot pass any resolution in the Tata Sons board.
So essentially the power was, concentrated. It was concentrated in the hands of those 3 nominee directors.
Exactly.
And as Mr. Mistry seems to have alleged in his letter, those 3 nominee directors were taking their instructions directly from Ratan Tata. Now we don't know if the second part is true or not, but the first part you're saying is laid out in the Articles of Association.
The third one was the role of
fourth one.
The fourth one was the role of the board. Now the role of the board was expanded to that of a corporate board which used to take decision on strategy and everything. So any strategy decision was supposed to be approved and cleared by the board, which included the 5-year strategy plan that Mistry came out with 2025. It has to be approved by the board. Mistry mentions in his letter that he has made presentations on the 2025 plan.
Yes, he does.
And that was approved of the board before he could have gone and implemented at the company level there.
Wow. So even the strategy needed to be approved by the board, not just the decisions that implemented the strategy. It was even the strategy in itself that needed board approval, right?
That's just the beginning. Even the annual plans of the companies, which is Tata Sons or the group companies, have to be approved by the board of Tata Sons. So the independence which normally a chief executive gets, or the executive chairman gets in making decision at the board level of subsidiaries, was not available to Cyrus Mistry, despite the fact he was the executive chairman of those companies.
So are these the key changes that you wanted to outline?
That's just one of them. The other one was the nomination of representatives. Now that's very key. He is a representative of Tata Sons on the board of all those companies, but the amendments say that Tata Sons have the right to appoint representatives at the annual general meeting of all these companies, especially if it's with respect to debt raising, capital raising, or divestment or acquisitions.
Okay.
So it basically says that if you're doing any of those where you're going to expand
Okay, I have two questions on that, but finish the changes and then I will come back to
and
questions.
finally, the right of the director. The director has a right to call a meeting by giving a 15-day notice, and if the board meeting is coming up, this is the first agenda that can be taken up at the board meeting and not the regular
So
agenda.
any director on the board of
Any
Tata
director.
Sons had the right to call a board meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, Sajeet, I'm going to argue 2 points here, right? I think the first point where you made the sort of the very clear suggestion that the power had shifted to the board, which in itself is not a very bad thing to happen. In fact, India could do with some more board control companies as opposed to letting the CEOs or the chairman, executive as they may be, to run loose, in terms of strategy and execution. So that in itself is not the bad thing. I think what possibly could be the negative thing is what Mr. Mistry pointed out, saying that the directors on those boards or on that board were representing the interests of the trust. But which in itself again is not very bad, right? Because the trusts are public charitable trusts, and ideally the trust's orientation or philosophy or goal should be to maximize the amount of money that the group can earn, keeping stakeholder interest in mind, so that the dividends that go back to the trust are larger and they can spend more money towards public good. So what's wrong?
And 66% stake is one.
60, yeah, I
that's a
know.
massive
So
amount.
what is wrong with this?
It's wrong. The only thing which is wrong is that the details which has been mentioned in the letter of Cyrus Mistry, which talks about how there is a potential $18 billion of write-off which is hanging on various Tata Group companies.
Okay.
And that $18 billion is not going to be owned by the Tata Trust, but by the minority shareholders of Tata companies.
Why? The Tata Trust is 66% shareholders.
Tata
If
Sons,
there is any
Tata
fault
Sons.
of Tata Sons, but okay, of course. But don't forget,
he's also
no,
suggesting-
Sajeet,
no,
that argument is a little flawed. I'll tell you why. Tata Sons' majority income comes from the dividends that it earns from other Tata
TCS,
companies.
TCS,
Yes,
89%.
TCS, because the other companies have been in serious financial trouble.
89%.
The point is this: why would Tata Trusts not want all the Tata Group companies to do well? Because if they do well, they pay more dividends to Tata Sons. If they pay more dividends to Tata Sons in turn returns more money to the trust, and the trust can do more
The
work.
question of independence comes there, right? They allow Ratan Tata the independence to go and acquire each and every company, but they are curtailing the rights of Cyrus Mistry.
So
to
that's it,
restructure.
right? So that's it. So if we can offer an editorial opinion, I think this shift to board control is really accompanies a cultural shift that's taken place at the Tata Group, and that is that for a very long period of time, Ratan Tata, for his perceived iconic image, pretty much could take many decisions on his own, and the board would not say no to him. And when he moved away, when he moved higher up to the trusts, he didn't want Cyrus Mistry to run in a similar fashion or in a fashion that could be anywhere close to Ratan Tata's management fashion. So he put in several controls, in place, saying no, but you have to run as per the board's requirement. I think it's the shift in style. It's the shift in what Ratan Tata allowed himself and what Ratan Tata is allowing Cyrus Mistry, based on your findings. That is most interesting.
And in fact, if you remember Mistry's recent interview to Tata.com, he gave interviews few and far between,
Right.
where he mentions a change in strategy, that some pruning decisions, some hard pruning decisions would need to be taken with regards to the group.
You remember the interview which they actually removed and they found a web cache of earlier this day. But Menaka will also come
on the
in.
BloombergQuint website for our
Absolutely. But there's also a couple of comments that have come in.
Yeah.
Especially when Sajeet spoke about the amendments to the AOA, the Articles of Association. Tina Vakil is tuned in right now. And she says, if the amendments in the Articles of Association had already rendered Cyrus Mistry a lame duck, as he calls himself, what was the tipping point? What urged the board now to take such a decision?
I wish we had the answer to that question.
And even Mohammad Moinuddin, well, he has an opinion which we must share. I do agree that he faced a tough time, but why now is he mentioning this point? Why was he quiet for such a long period of time?
Yeah, both are very good questions. I wish we knew the answers, but to know the answers, we have to be inside the head of Cyrus Mistry and Ratan Tata, and you'll admit that's a really, really tough job. But maybe some well-informed speculation here might help you answer those questions, and that is that I think it is now well documented from all the conversations we've had with several Tata insiders, with analysts, people observing the company, that the relationship between Ratan Tata and Cyrus Mistry was on a decline, that it was deteriorating. What the tipping point was, if there was 1 or 2 or 3, we don't necessarily know, but clearly something pushed matters over the edge. The fact that the relationship was on decline, I think, is something that we can say fairly confidently, because dozens of people have told me that, have told Sajeet, Payaswini and Aayush that as well. So I think maybe that answers the question.
Within 1 year of Cyrus Mistry taking charge as chairman.
Because of the change in control that you're talking about, right?
Which is there.
Yeah.
So, it's a basically, it's a wait and watch game maybe that Cyrus Mistry playing, saying that, okay, I will, at some point in time, the board will realize, because he mentions in this letter that he's been talking to trustees and board members that, this kind of alternate powerhouse will not work for the Tata Group, and we need to work, have a clear strategy.
But Sajeet, if I can interrupt, so some of the analysts have commented, right, that performance is not an issue as they see it, right? So maybe Cyrus Mistry was waiting that maybe his actions will give the board the confidence, and we've known him to be a man of few words, right? So it's
not just a man of few words, a man of no words. Ever since he took over in 2012, was it? Yeah. He has not done a single media interview. The only interview he did was to his own website, which was Tata.com.
He was just waiting for his performance to speak for itself.
And that performance he is detailed in this letter, where he said that despite all of the above, all the many financial issues that he's listed, during my term, operating cash flows of the group have grown at 31% compounded per annum. The Tata Group valuation between 2013 to 2016 increased by 14.9% per annum in rupee terms, as against the BSE Sensex annual increase of 10.4% over the same period. So he says, I in fact beat the benchmark in terms of group valuation. The Tata Sons net worth has increased from approximately 26,000 crores to 42,000 crores after considering the impairments. This has significantly strengthened our balance sheet. So that's again Cyrus Mistry making his own case, saying, look, you may think I did poorly, but the numbers don't seem to say so. Nonetheless, the board perceived his performance to be not good enough, and therefore decided to displace him, dismiss him, replace him, sack him, whatever word.
So I have a question here.
I so beautifully led up to my question to Payaswini, and you killed it, right?
So the question is the principle of giving shareholder returns in conflict with the Tata philosophy?
Why should it be in conflict? Sajeet, look.
I'm just asking you that question.
In fact, that was the instruction in his email statement as well.
He has been doing that for last
I want to enhance shareholder returns.
Yes. I want to enhance shareholder returns. And to enhance shareholder returns, I need to deleverage the group.
No, I'm
going to have to sell to make some hard decisions. I have to sell some assets. If it means I have to take a write down, I will take a write down. And this is what is been...
No, but Sajeet, 1 second, please. Let's just go back to the relationship between the trusts, the group and Tata's ethos or philosophy in life, which is that we want to work in the interests of all stakeholders. They're a company that doesn't like to sack people. We've known that, right? They claim they worked very hard.
Except for now.
Well, except for now. They claim that they worked very hard to build, a sort of a good governance image, though there have been some dents in it. Let's not forget the Neera Radia episode. One cannot completely forget that, right?
The Charu episode.
Yeah, or the Charu Deshpande episode. Yeah, absolutely, the Charu Deshpande episode. But nonetheless, why would Tata Sons and those who manage that company not want the Tata Group companies to do well, return more money to Tata Sons as dividends, so that they can put more money to work for public good through Tata Trusts? There can be no logical reason for why Tata Sons would not want to focus on shareholder returns, because it is in fact in favor of public good.
But then they entail taking hard decisions, could take a beating on their image.
Well, on every decision there is always more than 2 points of view, right? In this newsroom, I can tell you every editorial decision has about 48 points of view, right? So I suppose what he thought were hard decisions in the benefit of the group, maybe Mr. Ratan Tata and his team thought that they were decisions taking against the group, that maybe the group's image was taking a beating. I mean, we've discussed the Docomo case ad nauseum now for the last 1 year.
Again, Docomo was not a Cyrus Mistry thing. It was the legacy which he was carrying.
The problem was the legacy, the position that the Tata Group took on the Docomo litigation, and in some way argue that position was well born within law, that RBI and the government of India does not allow them to make the payment.
Technically, Cyrus can't take that position because the Tata Sons has to decide on that position.
Well, so you're, that's a good point. So you're saying that this could not be Cyrus's position alone. That this, given that the articles of...
He's been curtailed by the article of association. Any decision he takes has to be approved by a board resolution.
Maybe the board directors did not like this decision, but Cyrus prevailed with it. I'm just playing devil's advocate. I don't know what exactly happened in those board meetings. Well, that could be very well the case.
That's just one interpretation.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to the question I wanted to put to Payaswini, and that is that, Cyrus Mistry in the beginning of his letter says, I'm shocked at the events of this board meeting. Really, why would he be shocked? Because board meetings are called with the knowledge of the chairman, and agendas are set with the knowledge of the chairman, and discussions on those agenda points and in those board meetings are done with the permission of the chairman. So if Cyrus Mistry did not allow for this conversation on his performance to come up in that Monday board meeting, he would probably have not been sacked, at least not this Monday.
I'm going to make some informed speculations. Vinka, what Cyrus Mistry has said in his letter, what the law on board process and agenda says, and the Tata Sons comments to BloombergQuint that we did follow the process in law as per the Articles of Association, they don't add up, at least to me. So I'll tell you what the process on the
legal front is.
On the legal front is.
So first for the agenda?
No, first for
calling a board meeting. Okay. All right.
So the Companies Act requires that the directors are given a written notice to call a board meeting at least 7 days in advance. A shorter notice to transact urgent business can be called, but only if at least one independent director is present in that meeting, right? So assuming that meeting
on Monday
notice was sent to Cyrus Mistry.
Well, it would have originated from the company secretary's office at Tata Sons. So Cyrus Mistry would have definitely known about the meeting. There's no question about that.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Now, this is what the law says on the board process, right? Okay. Calling the meeting. Now, for the agenda of the meeting, the Companies Act points to the secretarial standards which are issued by the Institute of Company Secretaries. And those standards say that the directors should get the agenda at least 7 days prior to the meeting. The standards allow for supplementary notes on an agenda item to be circulated at or immediately prior to a meeting, but with the consent of the majority of the directors present at a meeting, including at least one independent director. And any item which is not included in the agenda can be taken up for consideration with the permission of the chairperson and with the consent of the majority of the directors present at the meeting, which shall include at least one independent director. Now I'm going to lay out certain sort of scenarios for you that could have happened. So Cyrus Mistry got, the origination of the board meeting happened from his office, from the company secretary's office at Tata Sons. Office. Now, and he did have the agenda in that notice, right?
Yeah.
But it could be, again, speculation. We don't know if that was the case. The agenda was vaguely worded. For instance, one of the lawyers told me it could be that changes to the structuring of key managerial person, right? That's an umbrella worded notice that, could have been handed over to the directors, and then the proposal brought up.
But Payaswini, if his relationship with Ratan Tata was deteriorating, if he had gotten the sense that things were not going well, I'm sure he would have looked at that agenda item with a great degree of surprise or suspicion and said, what do they even mean by this? Because any changing or in structure or policy related to KMP would also need his blessings. He is the chairman of the company after all, right?
Well, you can't blame him for not being this as investigative as I would have liked him to be.
Okay, fair point. All right. Okay, that's so scenario number one. That maybe it was vaguely worded.
Maybe it was vaguely worded. Second could be that there was a agenda, a supplement. The standards allow for the supplementary notes on an agenda. So if the agenda said, look, we are going to make changes to KMP structure, and a note was added to it later,
just before the meeting,
or at the meeting itself, that didn't require Cyrus Mistry's permission. That only said that it required the consent of majority of the directors, and at least one needed to be the independent director.
Okay.
So there was no permission of Cyrus Mistry to be.
So maybe the clause on dismissing the chairman could have been tucked into the supplementary notes to the agenda.
Right.
That's scenario number two, and that could have happened, like you pointed out in law, either just before the meeting or even at the meeting itself.
Right.
Okay.
And the third could be, look, if the agenda item was not included at all, and Cyrus Mistry would have been the investigative journalist that you and I would have him be, then the agenda could have been taken up only if it was not included in the notice at all, with his permission.
Correct.
And so that raises the question that why did he allow for it? That is one. And two, he could have just said that I should be given reasonable time to be able to put my case
Yeah.
in front of the board.
That's my question as well, Payaswini, that no matter how the agenda is set and how the board meeting is called, I think the law says very clearly that, if something is not in the agenda, right, and if it is introduced last minute in the meeting, it can only be introduced with the permission of the chair. In which case, Cyrus Mistry had the ability to say, hey, look, this is an unfair decision to have without giving me any notice. Why don't you give me some notice and I will represent my case to you as cogently as he is represented in this letter 48 hours after the board meeting. I mean, in fact, in this letter, he says very clearly that to replace your chairman without so much as a word of explanation and without affording him an opportunity of defending himself in a summary manner must be unique in the annals of corporate history. Why did he not then adjourn that conversation and say, I don't permit for this conversation to come up, adjourn the meeting, or whatever the technical words are before these two lawyers, correct me, and say we will take it up in a subsequent board meeting when I'm prepared to defend
but
myself.
If you look at, I'm just looking at it logically, just what the law
Based
says.
on what the law says.
Based on what the law says, I don't know what happened. So if the standards allow for the supplementary notes on an agenda item to be circulated, and needs a majority directors and an independent director to consent to it, Cyrus Mistry has no say in it.
So you're saying it was just possibly the scenarios are two.
Yeah.
It was vaguely worded
Yeah.
or tucked into a supplementary note.
Right.
Either one of those,
Either
which
one of
both
those.
amount to the same thing,
Right.
that he was not aware of how this was going to come up, that he did not expect for this to come up,
Right.
and therefore he was not prepared with an explanation. It came up, he could not stop it, he did not have the power to reject it, and he had
And
to
the
face
vote tilted against his favor.
and he had to face fait accompli, a word that he has used in his letter once already. All right, so that's possibly some, sort of well-grounded in law speculation of what could have happened in the board meeting. But of course, we have no idea what really happened in that board meeting. What is very, very clear is that we now have both sides throwing mud at each other. So we've had a lot of spokespeople on your TV channels, in newspapers, and and on BloombergQuint as well, raised several issues surrounding this episode, and the mudslinging is only going to get worse.
And after that, Pinka, one more point. Sorry, I used to
No,
interrupt. Just one more, another sort of demotion for Cyrus Mistry came in a filing to the MCA, where he was not only removed as a chairman, but from an executive director to a non-executive director. So he's not going to get salary from Tata Sons anymore. At least some commission maybe, but not the salary.
Well, commission only if you attend board meetings and
meetings,
sitting
right.
fees if you attend.
Yeah,
The
but
big question now is, will he, I was going to use that to end my conversation. Man, you guys can't follow any format,
but before
right?
you end your
Before
conversation,
that,
Menaka,
what were the
there's
comments?
several comments, and I'll let you read them out because they're also coming on your Twitter handle and on BloombergQuint's Twitter handle.
Okay,
so
well, no, go ahead. You can read
all
my
right, so
Twitter handle comments. That's all
I will
right.
I will read them, no filters. Rahul Suresh Rohra, the entire fiasco with Mistry is very unbecoming. Don't you think this is completely non-Tata like this? I think this came on Facebook. The caveat, the panic, the sacking, expected something like this in a Patanjali or Adani group. He doesn't think the Tatas should have been doing something
I don't
like
think
this.
there's any board in the Patanjali group that tells Baba Ramdev what to do. I could say that.
Ramdev is not on the board of Patanjali as well.
And
Well, but I don't think any board could even tell Baba Ramdev what to do. But
well,
it's fair enough.
couple T41, that's his handle on Twitter. Well, he writes to you and to BloombergQuint that disputes and differences are common. The Ambanis, the Birlas, the Shroffs have all tasted it. There's also a couple more coming in from Jack Bree as well. He says, too much dirty laundry being aired too quickly.
Yeah, well, we're going to see even more of this, and we don't know whether this will turn into a bitter legal battle between the two in terms of Cyrus Mistry challenging his dismissal. All the sense we get is that as of now, they're not very keen to take any immediate legal action. I use the word immediate very carefully.
The brunt of this would be borne by the Tata companies who are listed on the stock exchanges, because as soon as this $18 billion write-off came in, all the five companies, there has been a stock impact, and now what is going to happen is that analysts will start penciling down those write-downs in their estimates, and the targets will be brought down, because if you have a former chairman saying that this is $18 billion of mess which has to be written down, the analysts will not be keeping quiet to it. I mean, there is already a red flag which has been raised.
Yeah.
No, and
add to it the PTI source story, which says that SEBI has and the exchanges have written to the companies to seek
Clarify.
clarification on this.
No,
and
and
SEBI has said if there are any listing regulations or corporate governance violations, I mean, they're bound to look at
no, and
it.
addressing Sajeet's point as well, and this is a question that I'd like to pose to all three of you and everyone watching, to a large extent, considering it can have that impact. Do you guys think, I mean, you guys have been covering this for a lot longer than I have, that the damage control was too little, too late from either side. I mean, we were covering it for 48 hours out there. The statements came in late. Perhaps some of them, they came in later today.
I don't think they were completely been or blissfully unaware of what would follow, right? It wouldn't be that they would do something of this sort and not have Mr. Mistry react in the way that he did. So I don't know what damage control they could have done.
I think, the wheels started turning on Monday evening in itself.
Yeah.
And I think once they started turning, the car was going downhill with no ability for anybody to stop it in any fashion whatsoever. I mean, they've now opened Pandora's box, right, to keep mixing metaphors in this.
Yeah.
They've opened Pandora's box.
I'm reminded of another chairman's letter where he mentioned about the financials which are in mess for his company. But I don't want to name it. But
well, you shouldn't, because I think that might just be a bit of an extreme.
It is a red flag you cannot ignore.
No, look, let's be very careful. This is what Cyrus Mistry has said in his letter. He said a realistic assessment of the fair value of these businesses could potentially result in a write-down over time of about 1.18 lakh crores. Could potentially, he has not said will result. He's only laying out there the financial challenges that he has raised.
And that would be factored in by not only the rating agencies but also the analyst community.
Yeah, sure, I am. I have no doubt.
If the chairman of the group is saying that this could be a potential
write-down,
it is basically a conservative estimate.
But in doing this, and can I make this the final question that we want to put out there, or are there any more comments on social media that you want to bring up?
Talking about, I think Gautam had one comment, Gautam Khande. He said he is still the chairman of these other companies. He can write down, why is he blaming others? He could act.
Yeah, why didn't he do anything about this till now? Well, nobody wants to do a write down, as we have seen. It's not just the Tata Group, even banks don't until they're forced to by RBI, and then they result in, big loss in value. What Cyrus Mistry has said in this letter is going to give everybody a lot of time to think. There are several elements we haven't yet brought to you. He's raised issues at many of the operating companies, Indian Hotels, Tata Motors, Tata Power,
Air
Asia. I know. I mean, if you go on to BloombergQuint.com, you'll get to see not just the letter, but the variety of different angles to the letter and the various group companies that he's shown a spotlight on. My question is this. In putting this letter out, Cyrus Mistry may have put up some sort of an adequate defense of what went on and raised the alarm saying, hey, look, you guys behaved very, very badly or illegally and invalidly, as he pointed. But in putting this write-down figure out there, has he added to the perception that the board and the other side have been trying to build, saying he's not fully in control of what he's doing? Because the first thing they're going to point out is, when is the last time you heard of a chairman of a company put this kind of an alarming figure out there and spook the markets and spook investors? If this was the reality, then he should have done the write-downs because law require for it. And if it's not the reality, and if it doesn't have to be done.
Gradually, the point is that he was doing it gradually.
Did he get enough time?
The point is that did he get enough time, and did the members of the board allow him to do it? Or there was a point where they said no.
And yet, Sajeet, just think of a chairman who says there could be an $18 billion write-down. He uses the word potentially, and yet he's going to come in for criticism for spooking investors, isn't he? So maybe has he put some more ammunition in the hands of the very people who have not found confidence in his performance so far, for whatever reasons they have? I think that's one question. And the final question is on where will this go legally? And the most interesting part of this is, will he step down willingly from the board of Tata Sons? He is a non-executive director, but he's still a director. And don't forget that his home group, which is Shapoorji Pallonji, continues to own 18.5% of that company. Will he step down willingly? And it's not just will he step down willingly. He will have to be replaced as chairman by shareholder vote.
9 listed companies.
By shareholder vote on the boards of 9 listed companies, right? Is that going to be a battle? Is he going to make that ugly?
Next 5 days. We'll get to know.
Another Facebook Live, guys.
All right, guys. So we've given you enough, to think about and enough to come back tomorrow as we continue to follow what we call Aaj Ki Tata Khabar. Thanks very much for tuning in to Bloomberg Quint, and see you tomorrow.